Hello, welcome to the Knife Yak channel. Today I'm going to talk about this interesting knife that I borrowed from a friend of mine. He knows I'm interested in knives and he thought I might appreciate this one. This is a Douk-Douk. I don't know if you've ever heard of that. It's an unusual knife, and I had never heard of a Douk-Douk until I got my hands on this one. The Douk-Douk is a French slip joint pocket knife. I'll explain why it's called a Douk-Douk in a minute, but you can see it has etched on the blade the phrase Douk-Douk. And down here at the on the handle, you can see there's an image of a traditional Melanesian islander wearing a Douk-Douk costume. The Douk-Douk is some kind of tribal spirit god that is somehow associated with justice and retribution. And according to some research I did, the Douk-Douk is embodied in certain dance that the dancers wear this kind of a costume. It's really kind of odd looking, but it kind of looks like a bush with legs and a dunce cap. But according to some reading I did on Wikipedia, these knives were originally produced starting around the late 1920s, and they were produced by a firm called I can't remember the guy's name. Cognier, I think, is the cutlery firm, and they're based in France. And these knives have been produced ever since, and they've become traditional and have a little bit of an interesting history. Apparently, these knives were intended to be used or sold in the French colonies in Melanesia and North Africa. And apparently these knives were used in the colonial war in the 1950s and 60s when there was a rebellion against the French in Algeria. And apparently the FLN, or I guess it's the Front de Libération Nationale, pardon my French, would use these knives as an instrument of assassination and terror, and they would apparently cut off the noses of people that they didn't like. But so yeah, it's kind of interesting to say the least. I need to talk a little bit about the construction of this knife. It's the structure is extremely simple. This is probably the simplest knife I've ever seen in terms of construction. It consists of 6 parts. There's the blade. There is a wraparound. It's like a folded. Let me open the blade here. It's a single piece of sheet metal that's wrapped around the back spring, which is down inside. You can't see it. Normally, slip joint folder has the spring visible on the spine side of the handle, but here you can't see anything but just the folded piece of sheet metal. The spring is down inside, and so you get the blade, you get the handle, and there's 2 pins, one of which constitutes the pivot, and the other one secures this bail or lanyard loop. And the knife is very thin. It's about 1/4 of an inch thick at the handle. The blade is about, let's see, trying to remember exactly. I think it was, yes, just a smidgen over 3.6 inches in length. The overall length is 8 inches. The blade is about 1/8 of an inch thick. And Yeah, I'll mention also the spring is quite strong, almost too strong. But the good news is once you get that thing open, it stays open. So yeah, it's, I mean, yeah, it could still close on you when you're using it because there is no lock mechanism. But yeah, it's aggressive, and it has a convenient halfway stopping point, and you can hear that when I open and close it. This knife makes a nice resounding kind of a clanky sound when you close it, and it opens up and it stops at the middle, and then you can hear it snap open. When you close this, you almost have to, well, you can do it however you like, but you need to overcome the spring, and there's a tendency to want to grab hold of the handle like that. I would actually recommend that you hold the blade in a way that keeps your fingers off of the edge and just close the handle towards the blade, because that way you don't have to wrap your fingers around the handle, and it's safer, I think. This knife is available at certain internet dealers. I found it available at Blade HQ. It retails for $31.95, just under $32. So the construction is simple enough that it obviously shouldn't cost very much. It's not by any means a state-of-the-art or innovative design, but it does its job. It's an effective knife. I used this knife for testing purposes, just to get a sense for how the handle feels and the blade and whatnot. Just to give you a rundown, I carved a tri-stick with this knife earlier this afternoon. As I mentioned in one of my previous videos, I often will carve a tri-stick out of a wooden dowel just to get a sense for a knife and how it works. And after more than an hour of carving, pressing fairly hard and working the knife in several different hand positions, I was not too surprised to find that the inside handle is a little bit uncomfortable. It's not designed for extended hard use, I don't think, because it does kind of press into your hand. It's not comfortable, but it's not excruciatingly painful either. Just for comparison, I have here this is the first original version of the Leatherman pocket survival tool, the one that got the whole multi-tool thing started. Those of you who are old enough to remember these will remember that there's a thin metal edge that bites into your hands when you squeeze this thing hard. And the Douk-Douk is kind of like that, but actually quite a bit less painful because the metal is thicker. The sheet metal that this is made out of is actually thicker, and the handle is kind of thin. It lies well in the hand, and it's a little bit slippery, but yeah, if you squeeze it hard, you can feel that, but it's actually not as bad as I thought it would be. If I owned this knife and carried it, I would worry more about the handle. The corners of the handle would wear holes in your pockets, I think, fairly quickly. And so yeah, if you don't want to be replacing your pants all the time because the pockets get worn out, you might want to carry this one in a pocket slip cover or some other way. But yeah, I definitely prefer the one-hand opening knives with clips. The modern folder was invented for a reason. So this knife isn't the kind of thing I would carry on a daily basis, but it's certainly interesting and distinctive, and I would not mind having one of these in my collection. I guess I might as well do some of these size comparisons that everybody does on these kind of knife reviews. So here's the Benchmade bug out. there's always distortion on the camera because whichever knife is closest to the camera will look bigger than it really is. But the Douk-Douk is actually a little bit longer in overall length and blade length as well compared to the Bug Out. Here it is with the Griptilian. And I have here a Spyderco Manix 2. The overall length is rather similar on that one. And here I have a Delica, Spyderco Delica, with its larger sibling, the Andella. So that kind of gives you a size comparison reference. Let's get these out of the way. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the edge on this knife. When the first time I saw this knife, when my friend first showed it to me, it had no edge at all. It was as if the knife had never been sharpened at the factory and the previous owner hadn't sharpened it. It had no secondary bevel at all. So the edge that's on there now is not a factory edge by any means. I put that edge on there with Work Sharp Precision Adjust professional fixed angle sharpening system. I sharpened this to 18 degrees per side bevel, and now it's extremely sharp. And it was with this sharpened knife that I did the tri-stick, and I also spent some time in the garage this afternoon cutting up a significant amount of cardboard, and this knife performed extremely well. The blade, now that I've sharpened it, has excellent geometry. It's a full flat grind, and the knife is fairly thin behind the edge. And I don't know if you can tell, but when if I hold it up to the light a certain way, I don't know if you can see this. I'll try to give you some angles and maybe you can see the secondary bevel that I put on there is pretty thin, pretty narrow, which I think means that the behind the edge thickness is fairly thin, and that makes for really good cutting ability. When I was cutting up the cardboard, of course the edge was dulled by the cardboard, but it continued to cut extremely well just because the geometry is so efficient. So this is a good all-around user knife if you don't mind the difficulty of opening it and closing it against that rather hard spring. But I'm going to do a little sharpness demonstration for you here. I have a rolled up tube made out of a Post-it note, and I'm going to try to cut through this thing while it's standing on its end. And in order to make this a little more challenging, I'm going to support the paper tube on the bottom of an inverted saucer, which is rather slippery. So let's see if I can cut through this thing. It's trying to bite in. Let's try this. I need a steadier hand. It's trying to bite in. Give it one more try here. Oh, it almost got in. If you can just get the thing to dig in a little bit, it should work. Now it's just rotating around. All right. This is the last attempt. Oh, it's not going to do it. But I will. You have to believe me when I say I tried this before I started filming, and it did in fact work. I was able to cut through the rolled up tube, and I'm going to try this with a toilet paper tube, it should be a little easier because it's more grabby. Oh, and you can't, if you're going to do this, you can't cut the seam, or I should say you can't start on the seam because that makes it too easy for the edge to catch in, right? Well, this is disappointing. Oh, there we go. Anyway, I'm not going to keep doing that. It works. You just can't do it when people are watching. I have here a piece of catalog paper. It cuts quite well, as you can see. So here's a piece of surgical, or not, what do you call this? 550 paracord. It cuts rather effortlessly. It's quite easy. And so let's just give you a general overview. I think the cool thing about this knife is that it's kind of weird. It's kind of I don't know. I think this knife would be better for collecting rather than using, just because of the relative difficulty of deploying and redeploying. But I like, it has a funky kind of what's the word? Can't think of the word. It kind of like it kind of exudes that sort of I don't really care kind of hipster. It has a kind of a Euro, a kind of a Euro vibe, and at the same time, it kind of exudes an aura of anti-colonial mayhem. And I think this is the kind of knife that would go well with a pair of Chuck Taylor Converse All-Stars and a SpongeBob Band-Aid, because you're going to need it. Anyway, that's my review. Thanks for watching. Remember to like, share, and subscribe.